why don't we get started? We'll have some folks coming in, continuing to come on, but we're really excited to be here. So I want to welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Sam Melnick. I'm from Allocadia. Really excited to be here with three other really smart people, really smart marketers from great companies to talk about marketing performance management. And really today's webinar is going to be how to overcome the top roadblocks to better marketing performance. So really, we're going to talk about how companies like yours can improve marketing, can be better in this area. Before I kind of introduce everyone, on the call, what I want to do is some housekeeping. So we're going to do, this webinar is going to be a bit of a kind of Q&A, and so we welcome everyone to take a look on the left side of the webinar browser or of your webinar, what you see on your screen, and on the bottom left, there's an area to put in your questions and interact with us as we're going through this. So yeah, let's dive in and get started and get everyone introduced. So as I said, I'm Sam Melnick. I'm Vice President of Marketing here at Allocadia. I'm actually an ex-IDC analyst, which means I love sharing my opinions, whether you like it or not, about all things marketing. And at Allocadia, we help marketing organizations gain control of their investments and tie those investments back to results so really they can make more impactful decisions and improve their performance. So a little less about me. We've got three other really great folks on the line. And what I'm going to do is actually just kind of pass the proverbial mic down the line so they can introduce themselves and do themselves and their company's justice. So quickly we'll go Jeff. Why don't you go ahead, and then we'll have Pete, and finally Laura. So Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sam. Jeff Chamberlain. I'm currently Senior Director of Product Marketing at Origami Logic. We are a marketing performance measurement solution. I have been living in the fishbowl, I would call it, for the last 20-so years, where I am in marketing and selling marketing automation or aspects of marketing measurement or something in that MarTech logo slide that we've all seen. So it's always been fun and interesting to me to be able to meet and sell to marketers, work with marketers, relate to their problems because I'm living them, and so really enjoyed that. I'll hand it over to Pete.
All right, thank you, Sam. My name is Pete Matthews, VP of Operational Solutions at Response Capture. And I've been doing this for about 15 years in bringing process methodologies and ultimately technology and metrics into the marketing and sales realm and making them more, much more efficient, agile, accountable in today's world. If you want a high performance, we focus on bringing companies want to have high performance revenue generators achieve those goals.
All right, great. Thanks, Pete. Laura, why don't you jump in now? Laura, I don't know, you might be muted here. So if you are muted, would ask. All right, well, Laura, I'll introduce Laura. And Laura is the president and founder of VisionEdge Marketing. She has one of the earlier Her group works with marketing organizations and marketing executives really on marketing performance management. Laura is one of the early, and her group is one of the early stage folks that have taken on marketing performance management. They've been talking about this for maybe 10 or 15 years, so they're experts in that area in terms of the process and planning around this, and has been a huge advocate of this category. So now that we've done those introductions, what we'll do is I'll give kind of a bit of a preamble here. So, what is marketing performance management? So as we were moving through this project and this webinar and some of the other items we've been working together as a group, this came up in discussion. And I wouldn't call MPM totally prevalent yet. We're all working on that, and we think it's definitely coming there. There are plenty of definitions out there. As I said, and when I introduced Laura, she's been really banging the MPM drum for over 10 years now. So it's almost like we're seeing more and more people with someone like folks like Laura starting out here, and now more organizations, both vendors, consultants, and analysts following. And when we talk about it today, we kind of landed on this definition. I'll read it out. So marketing performance management is the systematic management of marketing resources and processes to achieve measurable gains in return on investment and efficiency while maintaining quality in the customer experience. And really, to me, the important part here is that management portion. The performance isn't necessarily the execution or just the measuring per se, but how you're holistically managing marketing across the board to create those better business outcomes or customer experience or driving more impact. And when you think about this and what I said on the last slide, there are a lot of definitions out there, but they're starting to come together. And while folks like Laura might have been on the so-called MPM island a decade or more ago, we're really, in the last few years, we're seeing a lot of validation around marketing performance management in this new category. So if you think about it, both Forrester and Gartner have been talking about it in the last few years. You look at, on the left there on your screen, Allison Snow, she's taking on that at Forrester, and you can see a nice quote below there about how she sees MPM. And then Gartner, starting with Kim Collins at Gartner, and now they're even come out with a very recent report that's starting to talk about performance management as the next way of what used to be MRM, or marketing resource management. So there's really a lot of good stuff happening here, and it's exciting. But the question is, why is MPM important? Why does it matter? So there's a lot of scary stats out there for marketers, particularly those top marketers. So this is a big, bold slide here, but Russell Reynolds Associates, it's reported that in 2016, CMO was at its highest level in 4 years. Turnover was at its highest level in 4 years. And, Forrester, they predicted that 30% of CMOs will lose their jobs in 2017. I showed this to my boss the other day, and he just kind of shook his head and was like, "Oh man, I'm tired of seeing these type of stats." But that's 1 in 3 CMOs, not ideal, and you don't want to see that as a top marketer, and it does put a lot of pressure. And it really comes to this final kind of quote that I'm going to pull out. This is Donovan Neil May, who's the executive director of the CMO Council. They stated this, and it's CMOs now have to show that they're impacting business growth right from the outset, or they're likely to be short-lived on the job. And these are, isn't exactly the warm and fuzzy type quotes that you want to see, but I do think, and I think everyone on this call agrees, that this is where MPM is important. CMOs must show that they're impacting business growth and having positive effects on corporate objectives and goals. So it can't just be, hey, we got a placement in the New York Times, hey, we bought some great ads, hey, we drove some MQLs. It has to be really driving business impact, and must be able to show that. And that's where MPM comes in, and for us and for all of those on the call, I feel like it's why it's a must-have. It can't be ignored. And just quickly, to put marketing performance management into context here and where it has to play, at Allocadia, and we did discuss this some as a group before the webinar, you've got these kind of two sides of marketing. I think even Jeff said that when he was, he'd worked with a different MRM vendor in the past before he's in his role, but he said that this is something that they had started talking about, this infinity loop stuff. So it's not necessarily a new concept, but you've got the two parts of marketing. It's you got the running of marketing, which we'd say is marketing performance management, and then the doing of marketing, which is the execution. And that execution, or the doing side, which is that right side, is all about attracting, acquiring, or retaining customers. It's really the executions. It's what a lot of marketers, they wake up and they say, I got to check off my list and run an event, run a campaign. But then there's also the running side. So that's the marketing performance management, and that's the strategy, the plans, that's the bringing the plans to market to a certain extent, and then finally that measurement and understanding how you can improve, what happened, and where can you do better, and where can you drive more impact. And really, marketers, and all marketers, whether CMO or field marketer or whatever, they have to focus on both, and you can't ignore that MPM side, so to speak. So I'm going to pause here, and let's actually open up a question here, and you could choose one or all of these, but what is your biggest challenge area in marketing performance management? We see stuff like marketing and sales alignment with sales and finance. Is it actually being able to measure marketing's impact on the business? Is it aligning to the corporate vision? So are you making sure you're aligned actually to what the company is trying to do, or confidence in your data to make decisions? Do you have data that you can stand behind? So I'm gonna catch my breath and let everyone put in some responses here, and let's see what comes out here. All right, great. So looks like we've got a relatively even split with the marketing and the alignment, and then measuring the impact taking up the lead, and then you've got the corporate vision, aligning to corporate vision. So it's more, it looks like interdepartmental is more of a focus, and then the data somewhere in between. Great. So yeah, just quickly as we keep moving forward. We want to go over these top 4 roadblocks. This is really where we're gonna dive into. Let's get to the good stuff here. So what we're going to do is address these 4 different areas within marketing performance management, or MPM, and really how to overcome the challenges. We're going to have some questions that we've gotten from some of our customers that have had in these areas in the past, and we're also taking questions from the audience. So again, on that lower left side, if you see something, you want to know something, how do you improve marketing performance management, or even just how are you improving marketing in this area of that kind of run that I just explained, toss it in there and we'll answer it. So let's quickly dive in here. So let's start with the corporate and alignment. So this is one of the first areas, and general buy-in. Really when you think about marketing performance management, getting that general buy-in to what marketing is doing is really important. And if you don't have that buy-in from sales, from finance, from the C-level or the board, marketing's never going to have a chance even to be successful, since success has not been agreed upon. So, let's start with a question that's a bit broader. So the MPM journey can appear daunting. So where's the starting point here? Laura, I think you're back. I think you've got your mic working now. So I think, why don't we start you off there?
Great. Thanks, Sam, and glad to be back and glad to be a part of this program. For those of you who may not know me, as the founder and president of VisionEdge Marketing, we focus on helping our customers use data, metrics, process, and measurement to improve the value of marketing. And I'm really excited about having everybody with us today, and this is a great starting point. Lots of research is coming out right now that is talking about the importance and pressure on the C-suite, on the CEO especially, and the rest of the leadership team to generate growth for their companies. And the C-suite is giving the CMO and the marketing team that same sort of message: create value and propel growth. And so it's really important, while we need to be aligned with all members within the organization and other departments of the organization, it's critical that we are aligned to the corporate initiatives. We know that about 20% of marketing organizations can do this really well. We also know that alignment is statistically significant in marketing's ability to prove their value. So really, I guess it comes down to what do we mean by alignment, and what do you do to get aligned? And why is it important to be aligned to the business, to the overall corporate initiatives, and not just to the sales organization? So what we know about these marketers, these value creators, the ones who are best in class, and we'll spend some more time talking about them, is they are thinking in much broader, more strategic terms, as opposed to some of their colleagues who might see themselves as in service to the sales organization or primarily responsible for producing campaigns. So alignment means that you understand what the business outcomes are and what role marketing plays in moving those needles, and how you're going to prove that you're able to actually address that. And that really is a different perspective, and it means that the marketing plan is a primary vehicle that these marketers use to make sure that they're aligned to the corporate initiatives, and that they have specifically called out the outcomes and how they're going to make a difference in addressing those. There's steps that you can take right now, even if you already are into your year. Go back to your marketing plan and make sure that every one of the marketing objectives syncs to a business outcome, and it has a very specific performance target, ideally a customer-centric one, that will be able to then be used as we start talking about accountability and dashboards shortly, that you can then use to indicate whether or not the value that you have created for the organization. Because if you have a performance target, it should be set in terms of the value or impact it's going to have on the business. So those are steps you can take right now. Go back to the marketing plan, make sure every objective is tied to a specific outcome, that every objective has a performance target, and that all of the initiatives and campaigns that you're going to run are then directly aligned to one of those objectives.
Great, thanks, Laura. That was good. So let's see. Next question. We'll do a second question on this corporate alignment. So here's one. When you think about alignment and buy-in with marketing and the plan, all in capitals, can you give some examples of stakeholders outside of marketing and why they're important, and maybe some tricks to win their favor? Why don't I take this one? I think Laura touched on sales. I think we've already talked a little bit about aligning to the corporate goals here. But I think when I think of the key stakeholders, everyone at each functional business unit is a key stakeholder, but really when I think about marketing and the plan, I think it's really sales and finance. So sales is kind of the obvious one, because you're looking at a revenue generation engine or group. So marketing and sales have to work together. We've talked plenty about that. And then there's obviously finance. And finance is important because they're looking to create predictability in the business, both on the top line and the bottom line. And marketing has a lot of discretionary spend. Marketing has, at times, and particularly in the past bit, had some unpredictability about where their value to the business is being driven, where it's coming from, and also even where they're going to land on their investment arm. And so I think finance is an important one as well. When I think about tips or tricks, I would say that obviously it goes back to what Laura was saying, it's aligning to business objectives. So every functional group is working on these business objectives, the corporate goals, and building their plans down from that. There should be some symmetry there, or some automatic alignment. But I think beyond that is bringing your counterparts into the planning cycle with you, getting feedback and making sure that they're a part of it, so you're not building out your expectations in a vacuum. That would be my thing. It's finding a sales counterpart, whether it's a sales leader or even sales operations if you're in marketing ops, to work with. And then in terms of finance, it's the same thing, whether it's the CFO or whether it's just an FP&A lead, making sure that they're aware of what you're planning for, making sure that there's communication going on. Great. So why don't we keep moving forward here? And for each of these, we'll do a takeaway. And I'll take this one. So really, when I think about the takeaways for creating corporate alignment here, so Laura really touched on this. So one is always tie those goals and measurements, the measurements you're focusing on, to corporate objectives. This doesn't mean that every metric needs to necessarily be tied directly to a corporate objective, but it does mean that every metric needs to roll up in a sense. There has to be a path to say, all right, we're measuring this rolls up here, and ultimately it will get to that quote-unquote CMO level objective and then corporate objectives. If that's not happening, or if that misalignment, so to speak, is happening too often, marketing won't gain that alignment. So second, I would say this is a never-ending job. I had similar to, we'll talk about data at some point, but customers said data cleanliness is a never-ending job. Well, the same thing as alignment. It's like you build an alignment when you built your plan, but particularly at the executive level, it's about communication. It's about building those bridges with counterparts inside and outside of marketing. So it's not just all right, we're aligned on the plan at the beginning of the year. The business can change quickly, the needs change quickly, and you have to be in constant communications with key people within the organization. And then it's also about support. So it's not just about communicating, but hey, how can we support sales' efforts here, or vice versa? And then finally, huge proponents here at Allocadia, you just can't forget about finance. Marketing and sales is hugely important, but really to an extent, it's something that's been focused on closely for 10 to 15 years. Always room to grow, but marketing and finance alignment is something that we're starting to see come up more and more with our top clients. And in some data that we've done, and even in some data that Laura's done in terms of surveys, it is an area that is a differentiator. At least that's what we're seeing in our data with surveys that we've run, that marketing and finance alignment is a differentiator in high-performing companies. Great. So let's keep on moving to the next side. So that's building process and technology. What's your approach to process and technology? So this is really a big part of MPM, and it's what often goes on kind of behind the scenes. So that means, do you have the right technologies in place? Is your data flowing correctly? And do you have the processes that you have to enable all of marketing? So let's see for questions here. So here's the first one. So as one's marketing tech stack grows, it can create significant friction and integration challenges. How can you minimize these challenges and manage it effectively and really build that efficiencies? Pete, why don't we toss that one over to you?
Great, thanks, Sam. So the picture you're seeing represents many things in here. So I just want to talk about the picture for a brief second. So we all know the old adage, I don't need a drill, what I need is a hole. But if you don't know the specs of the hole, what tool do you need to do it? And Laura, several months ago gave me a great adage that if you don't know the specs of the hole and you buy the shiny new object, typically you only do more damage faster. So that presents a lot of problems. So what's the best approach? And that creates a lot of friction in the company, because if you have a big tool and you can't get people to use it, or it's not proving its value, then it's an investment that's gone bad. So in order to minimize that friction, one of the things that we demonstrate is that technology is there to scale, to make you agile, and to hold people accountable to their part of the work that they're responsible for. That said, if you have a process that does not scale, that isn't affording you the agility you need, then the technology is only going to bring out those issues already. So you have a process that already works. If you're already successful and you can document that process in great detail and prove that it scales, that's one of the best methods and a proven method that allows you to look at the technology that's going to perform best for you. So we take the approach, and we recommend people take the approach, and the people who do it best have a very detailed map of how their customer buys, how their company sells in response to that buying path, and then determines the inefficiencies in those customer journey processes and the way they sell, fixes those inefficiencies, and then puts the technology on top of it.
Great. Yeah, that's some good stuff, Pete. Appreciate that. Okay. So we're getting some questions in. So next let's go with when it comes to execution, particularly around the operations behind marketing, is obviously important. But often this means people, process, and technologies. What should come first? The age-old question: what should come first? People, process, technologies, and how do they kind of play together to create those efficiencies and ultimately better execution? Why don't I take this one, and then I promise we'll get Jeff and Laura, or Jeff and Pete and Laura more involved here. But I'm going to give you the it depends answer. It really depends on the project you're trying to take on and what you're trying to accomplish. I think the one thing is you always have to think about these three areas: people, process, technology. For me, even I've been at a couple of marketing technology companies. When I think about technology, I really see it as an enabler, and it's an enabler for creating a process that you want. It's an enabler for getting the most out of your people. And even the right technology vendors can up-level your people, your skills almost. So I'd say don't buy a technology thinking it's going to be a magic fix, but instead use it as a kind of glue or connective tissue or whatever you want to call it to get you to where you need to go, and with this approach. So they have to play together. It's the same thing with a process. At a certain point, a process is only going to get you so far without either the skills or the technology to automate it and make it more efficient. Okay, so let's move to the summary here. So Pete, why don't we'll throw it back to you for the summary.
Yeah.
And takeaways.
Thank you. So the first one we talked about, and I agree with you, Sam. It depends, and the people I think are very important, and the process next, right? Typically, when you walk into a company, the people are successful already. So if you're looking at your job and you're doing your job well, one needs to approach it from how do I scale my job up? What are the best methodologies and best practices that let me scale, let me become more agile and prove that effect? And that's kind of the best approach. And then map it out. And then map it out 3 to 5 years, right? I may not need an enterprise solution today. I may need something that gets me scalable for the next 3 years, but also plan out beyond that, right? What am I going to need to scale for the next round, right? And plan it out to that degree. So what are sales goals? What are finances goals? What's the CE goals? And what is the investment going to bring back on that, right? So if you're buying and I agree with you, Sam, that if you're buying a technology solution, it is not a magic bullet. It is has an investment to increase your capability as a company. And one of the approaches and one of the reasons a lot of these fail is, what's my ROI in that investment? If I have 10 salespeople generate $1 million a month, can I make them 10, 20% more efficient through process and systems? Now you have a great message for an investment in there. And in that same path, now you match up with that in that 3-year to 5-year investment. You're matching up with the company. So, particularly sales, what's their goals? How are you contributing to that revenue generation? What percentage are you owning? And how does it approach that from an investment standpoint? And once you have those processes and vision out, now you have a roadmap. You create that into a roadmap strategy that allows you to show that you're going to keep up with the company goals and visions throughout those 3 to 5 years and hit those goals and show that your job, your work is responsible for the success of the company.
Great, thanks, Pete. No, I really like that last one too. It's like setting up what is, you have to have realistic expectations here. So let's keep pushing forward. So the next one here, let's move on to monitoring and measuring, particularly best practices around monitoring and measuring, and then really reacting to these insights. So, MPM, good in theory, marketing performance management, but if you don't have that data, that measurement, that monitoring to react to, and information to help you adjust your approach, there's really little value. So how about this question? So how do I deal with the overwhelming volume of data and sources involved in measuring marketing performance? So let's get Jeff in the game here. Jeff, why don't you take this one?
Okay, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. So you're going to hear a lot of recurring themes as we're going through this, but we've already heard a reference to the landscape of marketing applications and solutions and tools that are out there with the Chief MarTech slide that is getting so busy it's really illegible unless you put it on an entire wall of the room. So what you've got is this ever-growing list of applications, and they all create kind of their own little siloed view of performance. They all drive their own perspective. They all drive you to kind of look at performance from their perspective or their view of the world. And so we're just really flooded with data. There's too much because there's too many of them. And we're also kind of taking this inside-out view of data where we're looking at it from that application out as opposed to from our customers and the market back in. And I think it takes understanding and knowing how to deal with both of those. So you've heard Sam and Pete talk a lot about how to deal with the outside in. Start with your business issues. Make sure you're aligned to business. Laura talked about that as well. What I want to talk about is how do you deal with this flood of data that comes from just so many of them. And number one, you're never going to just pull all of those pieces together and look at the individual reports and be able to see what's going on across your organization. That's too complex of a problem. So as you think about what you want to do, you need to start looking at how to pull this data together across all those channels in some way to pull them in. There's technologies that are coming out to help. But if you just start with the technology and throw that at it, you're going to run into I think technology is going to fix my problem. So make sure you know what you want to measure, you know what you want to align to. And quite honestly, I would go through the heroic effort of trying to do it manually or throw Excel at it initially to get an understanding of what it's going to look at. It's going to mock it up. You're not going to do it with all your data. You're not going to do it across everything. But you'll be able to start to bring it to reality. And until you bring that to reality and show what you can measure and show how it looks and start to try and use that to drive some decision making, you're not going to understand the impact it's going to have on your org. You're not going to understand whether people are going to work with it, how it's going to drive process, and what it's going to do to you. But if you do try to tackle that, you'll get an appreciation for a number of things. You'll get an appreciation for how people are going to use it, what they're going to do with it, what kind of follow-up questions you're going to get with it, and you'll get an appreciation for the task it takes to pull the data in across channel and across your marketing view. So if you're looking at it from outside in and you try and present and collate the data outside in, you'll get that understanding. Another little just side comment, I see a lot of people trying to take other summary reports and pull those together. And I see that as just a way to really replicate errors, because very rarely do other manual reports that are put together not include some level of errors. So make sure you're working with granular data. And once you get an understanding and appreciation for how it's going to be used and what you need to do with it, then you can start to look at technologies that can help you pull that together. Laura?
Great, that was sorry, did I cut you off, Jeff?
Sam. No, that's all right. Back to Sam.
Awesome. So let's look through some of these questions. That was great. Thank you, Jeff. That was really, I think it was a good, as you said, kind of the caveat from, or the kind of pivot from the process technology into how do you take on a data source. So Let's go with, so next, what are some of the best practices, some of the best-in-class marketers that you've seen who have really mastered performance measurement and monitoring? What are they doing? I think, Laura, this is a perfect one for you, so why don't you take it?
Sure, happy to do so. So as someone who has spent the majority of her career as a practitioner, I know that it was always important to me, especially since I was tasked with measuring what we were doing in marketing and whether it was working. So I'm sure many of you have been facing that, and coming up with a way to report on that. I always try to find out what were best-in-class marketers doing. And so we've continued that tradition here at VisionEdge Marketing. We do an annual study to try to understand what those best practices are. And to the points that, Sam, that you made earlier at the start of this discussion, marketing has a wealth. We are in abundance of measures that we can use today. Almost every marketing organization is measuring and reporting on something. Nearly every marketing organization has some kind of technology, and they push the button and they think they've got a dashboard. So if that's the case, why, to the point you made, have so many CMOs sort of been given their marching orders, marching papers last year, and to Forrester's note about how many more might expect to receive their pink slips this year. Just last week, I think it was, or in the last week or so, the branding report came out, the State of the Branding report came out, and it just talked about the number one priority of marketing organizations is to prove marketing's value. So it's still a very big part of the conversation, even though we are all in some way or another doing something. So what are these 20%? And that seems to be the magic number. Just about every study we've seen and done, there's that magic 20%, 1 in 4 marketers who are really cracking the code. What are they doing? Well, we have identified a number of best practices, and I want to share 4 of those. The first one is around performance targets. This is really about managing expectations in a way. It is having agreement about what success looks like. And I am amazed at how many marketing plans we see and review every year that have no performance targets. They're very general, increase the number of leads, generate more demand, whatever it might look like, and grow brand awareness, whatever that might look like. And so one of the things that best-in-class marketers do is really have a clarity around the performance target that they are expected to reach. This helps to put a stake in the ground, right? So when they meet it or exceed it, they can declare success. They know if they haven't met it, they can now begin to try to understand why. It also, on the opposite side, if you don't have a performance target, then when you might choose to arbitrarily declare success, but the leadership team can also arbitrarily declare failure. So true monitoring and measurement really begins with this notion, our culture of accountability, and that means being willing to set a performance target. If you want to future-proof your job, whether you're a marketing leader or a member of the marketing team, you have to think in terms of what I call the capital M as opposed to the small m of marketing. Those marketers who think in the capital M are really thinking about the business and, to Jeff's point earlier, about the decisions that the data and metrics can help facilitate. And they're thinking strategically. So best practice 1, those marketers who are cracking the code have a performance target for every single marketing objective and every single marketing initiative. Best practice number 2 is selecting the right metrics. I mean, as I said, we are all drowning in measurement today. There's more measures than ever. And so the real question becomes, how do you select the right metrics? And ideally, those are the metrics that are tied to our purpose. And our purpose is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers. And so that means that our accountability and metrics cannot start with what we call the small m, our activities, the stuff we do in marketing, the events and the email campaigns and the website and the social and all the other things, which tend to take us down the path of capturing and reporting on marketing activities and what we spent on those activities, and potentially even down to the notion of what I call fake ROI around those activities. It really starts with capital M, making sure that those activities are tightly linked, that there is a link in the chain in the measures so that your ultimate measures, which are around those outcomes, those outcome-based measures, you can tie all the way back down to those activities, and so you have a chain, and they're all related. So there's a real continuum. It's an impact to value chain, as we like to refer to it. So that's the second thing they do. They select the right metrics, and those metrics are related to each other, and that's best practice 3. They really can form the chain, and the chain is essential to the best practice number 4, because they have the impact outcome value chain. Those chains become the foundation for their dashboard. And yes, to Jeff's point, often those dashboards have to be crafted initially manually, because it's not as simple as pushing a button on some kind of technology or tool. So a culture of accountability requires the processes, and those processes are particularly around measurement and reporting. If otherwise, what ends up happening if you don't have these chains is you end up with a smorgasbord of metrics rather than a dashboard that allows you to make critical business decisions. So these chains, they're the basis of the dashboard, and no matter what kinds of tools you use to create your dashboard, these chains cannot be created by the click of a button. They really have to, they take a little bit more than that to craft. And where are they sourced from? They're sourced from your marketing plan. And so there is a very tight relationship in best-in-class marketers between the marketing plan and the marketing dashboard. So those are the 4 key things that if someone wanted to begin to make strides right away, every single marketer can do those 4 things. There's no reason we can't.
Awesome. That's some good stuff. I think those are great 4 takeaways here. Let's move on to the takeaways here. So Jeff, I'm going to toss it back over to you here.
Thanks, Sam. So you heard this earlier, but technology isn't a magic fix for measuring. So you have to understand what you're trying to measure, and there has to be a purpose to it. So don't just jump into trying to find the technology as your first outlet, as much as it pains me to say as a technology provider, but that is the reality. And make sure you do have quality data. I have a famous saying, goes all the way back to the days when I was working on manufacturing automation, so I'm dating myself here because I was around when that wave started as well. But if you automate a bad process, you just make bad stuff faster. And if you automate a bad process in marketing, you're not going to get the outcomes that you desire. So you have to think about what it is you're doing, and don't look for technology to just come in and do that. Technology carries with it a workflow and how it expects you to execute and how you need to utilize it. So think about that, understand what it is you want to do and how you want to run, and then find technology that will automate that. Don't let the technology drive your process. And then, start with these overall objectives, as we said, move to the needs of the stakeholders, and finally process. Understand that you're going to have an impact on people. You might have an impact on their jobs. You might have an impact on their careers. They may be just resistant to change. There's a lot of interesting work out there on how people respond to change and how people react to change. Some people love it. Some people hate it. So keep that in mind as you're moving through. Take into account that whole change management aspect as well. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. So let's push forward. So last but not least, so we've got creating impact and value. So really this is the end goal of MPM and frankly all of marketing. You want to create impact. So let's dive in on some questions that focus here specifically for MPM. So I think this one's good for Pete. So how does a company decide on what tactical and strategic wins are important and why? So really the difference between tactical success and then strategic wins or strategic success.
In the essence of technology and process, or overall?
Overall. But if you can focus in on the technology and process, I'd say let's focus in on the technology and process there in terms of how those are driving there, just since that's where you're focused.
Right. So the if look at the top goals of the CXO team and understand them implicitly so that you can draw a conclusion all the way to no matter what your level of how you're supporting those goals. And then look for ways to efficiently get there. So if sales job is to create, double-digit growth, let's say they have 30% growth for the next coming year, and they're relying on marketing to do 10% of that, then your goal is to figure out how to generate that 10% of that business. And scaling with just people isn't going to work because your budget is limited. So how are you going to do that, right? So as you adopt the right processes, as you adopt the right scalable methodologies, then the investments into those technologies will help you get there accurately. I can express this greatly in an example I did a couple years ago. There's one of the fastest growing construction companies here in Denver, and named 4 times the best company to work for. We implemented a dynamic solution. They have a sales team of probably 10 to 15 people. At any one given time, manually in spreadsheets, they were tracking 950 construction projects. We implemented Dynamics for them, and in 18 months, they were tracking over 1,700 new projects, which is great. But here's the key part to that. They didn't hire any more salespeople. They didn't hire a marketing team. They did it all with the existing crew that they have. They developed relationships and scaled each person by a certain percentage. And they're on a 3 to 5 year plan to double their growth in that time frame. And so that is a true business impact. The other great story of that was talk about best practices. When they launched, they started this in April, launched in November, and they never had a major issue with their system. It launched with minor issues, tweaks, and they've used it successfully, and within 18 months they had it all paid for.
Okay, great. So let's keep zipping through one question. Thank you, Pete. That was great. So let's go with this question. So how do I keep up with the reporting demands for marketing? You spend a lot of time building quarterly reports and then an immense amount of time on follow-up questions. How do you really zone in on those reporting demands so you can focus on that impact and value? So I think, Jeff, why don't we go with you there? That's right up your alley.
Sure, thank you. At Origami, we spend a lot of time trying to help people move to a more agile reporting environment. And the biggest challenge we find is we walk in and they show us their big quarterly reports that they take 6 to 8 weeks to develop. So by the time they come out, they're probably a quarter to a quarter and a half behind of when things happen. And they go, okay, we want you to automate these reports. And what they don't do, and what we push them to do is think back. Why are you doing these reports? Are you just reporting for reporting's sake? And unfortunately, a lot of times what we find is that it's just become a process that's been there for a long time. Someone needs to see the reports to feel warm and fuzzy, or some executive wants to look at it, and it's a checkbox. It's not really driving a business behavior and a business action. So there's automation that can solve how long it takes to build the reports. But what you need to think about is what you're doing with the reports and why the reports exist, and narrow it down to the important things, not try and report the whole world. Find the important things. You can find them over time by looking across the values. So I would keep it short and quick to those key points.
Yeah, no, I think it's almost like creating a scope around reports and then calling out scope creep, but making sure the scope hits what you're trying to do to drive a business impact and keep it focused there. Okay, great. So why don't we, to take us home, this will wrap us up in terms of the points, and we'll do a quick wrap up. But Laura, why don't you take our takeaways here?
Sure. be delighted to do that, and I know we are pushing the time, so I will kind of go quickly. Hopefully everyone's gotten at least one good idea, practical idea they can take away and begin to put into practice. So I think that one of the key messages here is that the C-suite mandate for CMOs and marketing orgs everywhere to create value and propel growth, it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. And those of us who can't do it, we're at high risk, as evidenced by what's happening out there in terms of CMO tenure and the number of CMOs who lost their seats last year and the prediction by Forrester for this year. We know it can be done. There are some marketers who are doing it extraordinarily well, and we know a lot about them. And we know they're one of the first things, and I think this is something all of us can need to remember, is that those people and all of us need to be business people first and sort of marketers second. So remember that our job is to be thinking like the C-suite and helping the C-suite run marketing like a business. That is all about the customer, so we need to be customer-centric and realize that our purpose is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers. And if we do that, we become the chief value officer of the organization, which makes us a much more relevant and gives us a much more valuable role in the organization. We need to remember that it starts with alignment. Aligning marketing initiatives and investments to what matters to the business is the first and foremost thing to do, because if you do that, it will become much clearer what the right metrics are, and then we need to use those metrics to formulate the right kinds of dashboards that prove our value and facilitate decisions. These marketers are data hogs. They embrace data. They are all about process. They have process maps, not just for the customer journey, but for everything. They have and employ tools and develop the skills of their people to facilitate alignment and agility. And like the best athletes, they leverage coaches. They're not afraid to ask for help. They're relentless in their pursuit of continuous improvement. They look for every opportunity and advantage to benchmark and build their marketing organization around best practices. So I think those would be my wrap-up points. Those of you on the journey, thank you for sharing our passion. This is something that means a lot to all of us that are speaking with you today. For those of you that are at the edge of the cliff and you're unsure about taking the plunge, we hope that you will take a leap of faith and jump in. All of us today and others that are in the discipline are standing by, and we are really, truly committed to your success. So Sam, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Laura. That was good. And I think your last bullet point there is a great way to kind of start the wrap-up. It's like there's no immediate fix. It's in continuous improvement. It's kind of taking steps forward, finding another problem, solving that problem, so on and so forth, and really working with data, working with technologies to create efficiencies. Those are all important parts of the journey, as you say so eloquently, Laura. So this is really great. I think everyone, you've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of marketing knowledge, a lot of marketing experience on the line here, and I felt like it was really informative for myself personally, and hopefully everyone on the line got that same value. I think one other thing that all of our organizations have worked on is these 3 guides to MPM, so a great big guide to marketing performance management. As you can tell from this session, there's a lot to cover, and we haven't even really broached the surface. So we split up the content into 3 different guides. Lots of time and thought has been put in here. So we'll send these up as a follow-up, and please do take a read through, and feel free to reach out to any of the 4 of us, if you have questions, or if we can help in any way beyond just marketing performance, beyond just this core content. There's a wealth of experience here. We'll send those follow-up slides, but we wanted to leave you with a bit of an overview of each of us and our organizations and what we focus on. And again, as we dive into this, and as you dive into marketing performance management, you have our contact information here, and we'd welcome a conversation about anything that's been discussed today and anything that we can help you learn more. So, I want to thank Jeff, Pete, Laura for their time in this, and I think this has been a very interesting exercise between the webinar and between the content that's been produced. So thank you, as it's great to continue sharing marketing performance management and how that can help